Hey YouTube, it's your boy Mag again, and man, we've got a good one for you today. If you're a console gamer, if you're a PC gamer, uh, I'm gonna tick both of you off, and I'm gonna make both of you happy at the same time, in different intervals. Um, I am finally getting into the part of my channel where I'm gonna start doing some builds and some benchmarking, and the first thing that I want to do, I grew up. I mean, the first console I ever played on was Atari, NES, Super NES, on up. I've always been a console gamer. I've had friends that had PCs, and I played the original Doom and stuff like that. Um, but I never had one myself for gaming until about 2006, and I was playing Counter Strike on a on a basic Dell without a dedicated video card. Um, my friend who I worked with took me to a Tiger Direct, and we bought I don't even remember what it was, some kind of ATI graphics card, so that I could actually have some better quality graphics and run some frames. It ran off power off the board with no power connections going to it. Um, and then from there, I went back to consoles until this year. Um, and so, there's always this debate about console versus PC, which one's better, and you know, PC definitely. What's the hashtag PC master race, right? Um, Always think they're better, uh, and in a lot of ways they are, but we're going to talk about why they're not. Um, and this all started because I want to do a build, and this is not original, right? Like I'm not the first person to have this idea, but I wanted to look into building a PC that would match the performance of a Series X and or a PS5. Um, and you may or may not know this, but it's a lot harder than what it sounds like. These new generation consoles are essentially gaming PCs shrunk down, um, and they're pretty powerful. You can see the stats right here on the screen. You know, 3.5 gigahertz, two cores for both of them. PlayStation 5 is at 3.5 gigahertz base clock. Xbox Series X at 3.6. They both got RDNA 2 Navi GPUs, 16 gigabytes of GDDR6. They both got SSD storage. They've got the benefit for some people of having optical drives. So you got a collection of Blu-ray movies, play Blu-ray movies 4K on your TV. Um, Both of them have wired connectivity. PlayStation has Wi-Fi 6 and Bluetooth, which I love that it has Bluetooth. Xbox has Wi-Fi 5, and maybe the biggest thing here is they both, and this graphic is old. All these graphics are from PC World, by the way. 1080p, 4K, 8K, and then the Series X says 1440p. Well, now in 2023, we do have 1440p on PS5. It's not exclusive to the Series X anymore. I actually just bought my son for Christmas a Samsung G5 1440p monitor, and he's got both the Series X and the PS5 hooked up to it, and he loves it. It's running great, looks great. He was playing on an old 1080p LG LCD TV, so big upgrade for him. But that's kind of where the crux of this thing is. These consoles will play in 4K. Now, I can't find a lot of information out there, or you got to keep digging and go into individual games and whatnot. A lot of games are being upscaled, but more and more as time goes on, a lot of games are playing in native 4K without any upscaling. Now, a console is playing those at low. If you were to compare them to a PC game, and you think about your presets for your graphics quality, the consoles are on low to maybe medium, depending on the game. But they're running at native 4K resolution, up to 120 frames per second if your TV supports it. And we're going to talk about this, as we go along. to get a PC to do that is not as easy. So I kind of got in this whirlwind. I wanted to make this video last week, but I've been looking up specs and I've been ordering parts and just researching things and trying to figure out exactly where I wanted to go with this video and with this build. And I kind of threw away the idea of a true budget build to compete with a console because you just can't. When I asked around on social media, most people consider a budget PC build to be between $500 and $600. Now, when most people are talking about a PC build, they're not including peripherals. No monitor, no keyboard, no mouse, no controller, no nothing extra. Just the tower. $500 to $600. I'm here to tell you right now, any PC that you build for $500 right now in January of 2023 is not going to live up to the expectations of a PS5 or an Xbox Series X. Because what kind of graphics card are you going to buy that's going to support 4K even at low settings and the rest of your build? And then I do think you need to factor in, if you buy a console, I mean, most of us already have TVs, right? If you're watching this, if we're talking about gaming, you've at least got a TV, probably got a 4K TV. You really legitimately can just buy a Series X, hook it up to your TV, and start gaming. And you can sit on your couch and relax and play whatever you want. And Game Pass, this is just my personal opinion, but I think Xbox Game Pass is the best value in entertainment that there is. I pay like $45 every quarter for Game Pass Ultimate, so it includes my Xbox Live and Game Pass. And there's just so many games to play. Now, every game you want to play certainly is not on there, but there's a lot of options. And so I think it makes it a really, really good value. So if you really want a budget gaming setup, I recommend one of the consoles. I do. I'm not going to tell you which one. I do favor one versus the other, but you can look up the specs and, you've probably at this point in 2023, you've all probably played on one anyway, but, I don't think you can go wrong with either. You got to think about maybe the exclusives that are on each one, but, controllers, I love the Xbox controller. I will say that this is my favorite, but the new PS5 controller, is pretty amazing also. You just get everything in one box and you hook it up and you can start playing. And if you want to spend a little bit more money into the setup, you could buy yourself a 1440p high refresh rate monitor. You could buy yourself a 4K, even a 4K 60 hertz monitor would look amazing with these consoles. Personally, I would do 1440p, especially if you're more budget oriented. Get a 27 inch 1440p, like 144 hertz monitor. Set it to 120. You're going to enjoy yourself immensely. You're going to get great visuals. Now, if you're playing on a monitor, you're not going to have speakers, so you probably got to get a headset, which is going to be another $35, $50, $100, $200, depending on how big you want to go there. But similar thing is what I'm going to show you with PC. Just the snowball just keeps getting bigger and bigger. So, to just summarize, if you're a budget gamer and you've got $600 to spend, I think you got to pick a console, and then maybe as time goes on, you can, buy the extra accessories and peripherals that you want for that. So moving on, we're going to talk about the PC build that I came up with. And I think I did a pretty good job. What I went for here was not as cheap as possible, but definitely cheaper. I mean, you could spend five, six, 10, $20,000 on a PC if you wanted to. So the budget that I picked out was around $700, but this is going to get you a rig that will play 1080p at high settings, and leave you with an upgrade path to get you into 1440p and maybe even 4K. Let me bring out the build list here, and we'll go through this, and we'll start talking about it. Get rid of these guys. So this is the build right here. i3 13100F, the newest, latest, and greatest base model 13th gen processor. It's 4 cores, 8 threads, 4.5 gigahertz. It's a pretty excellent GPU. Okay, so we're on Newegg, and I'm going to show you all these parts here. So i3 13100F, $125. That's pretty cheap. Now, I initially was thinking about doing a 10100F because you can get those for $75, so $50 cheaper. But then you're on 10th gen Intel, completely dead platform. This way, now LGA 1700 is probably dead as well, but if you go with a 13100F, you can upgrade that later on to an i5, 13600 maybe, 13400. I will say I've got some alternates on my build list, and I'm going to put this build list in the community section of my YouTube page. So go to my channel, and then click on community, and there's some posts there. I've also got a poll. If you want to take part in the poll, that'd be cool. So you can look at this on the community page. 13100F is the main. Alternate, if you want to save a little bit of money, you could do a 12100F. If you've got a little bit of extra money in your budget, you could go up to a 12400, 12600. But the thing that I found was that, let me go back to the web browser here. So the 13100F, 125. The 12100F is only going to save you $15. Now, if you're really pinching pennies, maybe that $15 makes or breaks the build. You could certainly go with the 12100F. It's going to be a little bit easier to build with a 12th gen processor because you're not going to have to do the BIOS flashback or the Q flash on the motherboard to get it to run the 13th gen processor. But this is why I went this route. You can get a cheap B660 motherboard. So this is the Gigabyte one that I went with. The B660M DS3H. It's a DDR4 board, 1700 socket. It doesn't have a lot of bells and whistles, but it's pretty cheap, $110 for a new motherboard. Now again, you can go down that rabbit hole, and you can go on Mercari, and you can go on eBay, and you could buy a B550 or a B450 or whatever kind of used boards you can find out there for $50, $60. You could find a used 3600G or 5600G on there, a 10100F on an Intel board, and yeah, you could make this a lot cheaper, but at the end of the day, what are you actually going to have? I don't personally feel like it's worth it. If you think that that's worth it and that's the way you want to go, that's totally fine, but that's not what I decided to do. And I wanted a new motherboard in particular so that I knew that it would have the IO shield and it would come with all the hardware and all the things that I would want. I know that it's not going to have any bent pins. So this is my build guide. This is what I'm doing. If you want to follow along and try and copy this, I'm going to show you all the individual things and how you can modify it to your taste if you want to. But I think this is a reasonable enough board. I looked at some reviews on it. It's like, okay, It's not a Z series board, so it's not going to perform like one. You know, it's a 8+2 VRMs. It's only got the heatsink, you know, on half of the VRM over here. There's none for the top. Um, so you're not going to be able, and it only has the, you know, the one 8-pin EPS connector. This is not a board that you're going to go crazy overclocking with, or probably even want to overclock at all. But that's okay, because we're getting a 12100F or a 13100F, which are not unlocked processors, so you're not going to overclock them anyway. So this is pretty good performance for the dollar that you're spending. Brand new series of Intel processor, decentish motherboard. And the if I didn't mention this, the one of the good things about here and comparable to a console is that you've got two M.2 drives, and the top one even is a Gen 4. So you've got a Gen 4 drive, and then the bottom one is a Gen 3 drive. It supports it's a DDR4 board. It's got a maximum speed of 3200 megatransfers at not CL16. That's not a It's got DDR4 DIMM slots in it, so you can run a max speed of 3200 megatransfers. I went with, as you'll see, some Team Group 3200 megatransfers CL16. That's going to run great, and that's the max that the CPU supports. This motherboard will support higher speeds, but the CPU is limited to that 3200. So that's what we went with there. So we've talked about the CPU. We've talked about the motherboard. I've mentioned the RAM. Now, this RAM that I went with, I've got T-Force DDR5 in my main computer. It looks good. It performs well. So I think this DDR4 here is a good deal, because we're trying to stay on the cheaper side of things. It's not RGB. It's just some good looking sticks of RAM. If you want to go with some RGB RAM, absolutely feel free. It's going to probably cost you $10-$20 more. You can add that into your budget. But I was trying to keep the cost down as low as I could. So $47 for 16 gigs of some decent RAM, I thought was a good place to start with this. You can always upgrade your RAM too. I think 16 gigs is a good sweet spot for gaming. If you're going to try and do some multitasking, which I don't know how much you'll be able to get away with an i3 processor, but you could go up to 32 gigs. But you are going to have to, if you do that, you would have to take these out, and I would recommend selling them. But the CPU only supports 2 sticks of DDR4 RAM. So you'd have to get a 2x16 kit if you want to upgrade in the future. But this is the RAM we went with. Again, feel free to choose whatever RAM you want to go with, but I was looking for under $50, and I found it. Now this is pretty important here. Power supply. I could have saved a lot of money on this build if I went with a non-modular or semi-modular non-tier A power supply. But again, the point of this build is to give you something pretty decent to start with and give you at least a few upgrade options. This Corsair RM750X is a tier A PSU on the PSU Cultist list. It's 750 watts, so it's way overkill for this build. 100%, this is way overkill. But what it's going to allow you to do is upgrade down the line. So we're starting with a 1660 Super in this build. A 750 watt tier A power supply. You could go up to a 4070 Ti. You could do this build right now and say, you know what, I'm going to make this a $1,200 build, and I'm going to throw a 4070 Ti in there, and you're going to have a heck of a rig. But but that's a lot of money to spend. And, I don't want to get into all the bickering about whether the 4070 Ti is a good value or not. So forget I even said that. If you want to take it back to the console aspect, most of the reading that I've done about this says that the consoles are somewhere around they're AMD GPUs in the consoles. So to keep it fair or even, they're probably comparable to like a 6800 or somewhere in between a 6700 and a 6800. So comparable on the NVIDIA side would be a 3070. And if you think about it, that starts to make sense because a 3070 or an RX 6800 are both going to run 1440p pretty dang well. Probably max settings, triple digit FPS, or close to it, depending on the game. And you're probably going to get close to 60 FPS in a lot of games in 4K with those cards. If you go with Team Green and go with an NVIDIA card, go with the 3070, you're going to get DLSS, so you can get some upscaling in there. And that card will run great in this build. My girlfriend's computer, we built that. Well, she built that. We built our computer simultaneously. She's got a 10100F in hers with a Z490. And we initially started out with a RX 6600, and I surprised her and I got her an RX 6700 XT, a Sapphire. So she's running a 6700 XT with a 10100F, and that thing slays 1080p. She's been playing Red Dead Redemption 2 in that thing, and it is buttery smooth. Frame rates are insane. High quality settings. It's just amazing. And if she ever wanted to upgrade to 1440p, that thing will do it no problem. So 13100F, another i3, but a few generations newer. You could definitely pair that with something like a 6700 or a 3070 and have a really killer rig going on. But that's all possible because we're not cheaping out on the power supply. This power supply, like I said, you could do a 3080. You could do, if you want to go above and above the console stuff, you could do a 3080 if you can find one. The 4070 Ti, like I said, probably do a 6800 XT or a 6900. This thing is going to do it. So I would not recommend skimping on the power supply. This thing, you can pull it out of this build and put it in your next build. I really think this day and age, with the way that the power limits are going with the GPUs and whatnot, 750 is probably the minimum that you want to get. Now, if you just really can't, and you don't want to get a console, you want to build a PC and you're going to try and keep the costs down, then you're going to want a 500 watt, maybe 550 watt, tier C or better on the tier list. And I'm going to link the tier list in the description of the video. So you can go there and check that out. But this RM750X tier A, it's going to support any needs that this particular build could ever want. Leave you room for upgrades, transferability to other systems. It's just a great power supply. We're going to move on to the storage. And this is another, you could save $30 here too, or spend another, well, you could spend as much as you want, but I really have been liking the Crucial P3. It comes in at a really good price point, and it's got really good performance. I don't think I would use it super long term as my main drive because it's a NAND flash. It doesn't have a DRAM, a DRAM. I don't actually know how that's supposed to be said. So the read-write cycles are going to be less than something like a Samsung 980 EVO. But for a gaming rig, this is going to be great. You're going to have great speed, great performance. And with that motherboard, you've got space to upgrade later on. So if you need to save $30 off the get-go, Where's so the 1 gigabyte model is $64. I mean, that's a steal for what stuff is going for right now, in my opinion. You can go even cheaper. You know, you could go to Micro Center and get something like, or I think Amazon sells them. You can get an Inland. They're even cheaper. I don't think they're as reliable as Crucial. I mean, Crucial is a really good brand. I have faith in their manufacturing processes, and um, this is my gaming and my main rig. This is my gaming drive. I have a Samsung 970 1 gigabyte or 1 terabyte as my boot drive, with Windows on it, with all my Adobe stuff on it, with all my programs on it, and then I have a Crucial, this exact drive P3 1 terabyte as my game drive. Because with my games on there, I'm not having a lot of read write cycles. I just write to it, get the games on there, and the updates go on it. Um, it's not going to wear it out as fast as like doing my video editing and whatnot on it. So I'm doing my video editing on the Samsung, just gaming off of this one. But you could start out with the 1 terabyte. You could start out with the 500 gigabyte. You know, for $35. You know, use this as your boot drive, and then you know, like we talked about, that motherboard has an extra M.2 slot, so you can you put another one down there, 1 terabyte, 2 terabyte, whatever you want to do, you can add to it. You could even, you know, later on down the road, if you want to put a Gen 4 drive in there, you could clone your boot drive from the Crucial and have a, you know, a Gen 4 drive in there. I don't think that's really necessary, but whatever floats your boat, right? So I would recommend doing the 1 terabyte. That's going to allow you to put your operating system and any other kind of programs you want on there and still have space for a decent amount of games. And it'll run great for you. And I will say, I've read that these Crucials, I haven't monitored the temperature on mine, so I looked up some specs on it, and I guess they do run a little warm, 60, 65 C, but that should be fine with this board. It may even run cooler in this board because it actually has a pretty beefy heatsink on it for that first drive. So another advantage of this B660 from Gigabyte. Let's go back to the list here. So yeah, this is 1 terabyte. You go down to 500 gigs to save some money. I'm going to skip the graphics card for a second because we're going to do some talking here. So the case, man, cases are tough, bro. Like, you can spend a lot of money or you can spend a little money. You know, there's a lot of stuff out there for 45, $50, $55. A lot of it is junk though, in my opinion. Um, or they don't come with any fans. You know, one of them that I looked at as an alternative to this Air 100 ARGB was the Lian 205M mesh. That's a pretty decent case, but it only has 2 front fans and no rear fan. So that case costs about the same as the Montec Air, but the Montec Air comes with 4 fans. Let's take a look at that guy. Now, I got a really good deal on mine. Micro Center has them for $65 right now. And if you want this case, I actually suggest you go out and buy it. Like, you should shut this video off. You should find one online or drive to Micro Center and buy it immediately. They're always sold out. I saw this on Zach's Tech Turf long time ago, earlier in last year, and I was like, oh yeah, I want to get my hands on one. He had talked about them being out of stock constantly, out of stock, out of stock. So when I saw one up for grabs when I was getting ready to do this build, I went right to Micro Center and got it. My Micro Center says that they have 3 left, and I got a really good deal on mine because it was an open box. It was, I guess, a return or something. So instead of $65, I got it for $51.99 or something like that, open box. Pretty rad. But this thing is decently wide. It's got good airflow, and it comes with 4 fans. You've got 3 intake, 1 exhaust, so you're pretty much set. You don't have to add any fans to this one. If you go with something else or something that's a little cheaper, you might have to, you know, spend $20 on a fan. which is going to bump the cost of the case up essentially. Some of the other ones that I mentioned, where's my graphic here? You could look at the Montech X1 or the X3. The X1 is around a $50 case, but it's got a pretty good feature set similar to the Air 100. The X1 and the X3 are both mid-tower ATX cases. The Montech Air is a micro ATX, which fits good with our B660M because this is a micro ATX board, so it's going to fit well in there. But you can put a micro ATX board in a regular ATX case. You just have some extra space around it. So the X1 and the X3 are mid-rise ATX cases. The X1, now I don't have any hands-on experience with these, so I looked at some reviews, I've looked at some pictures. I mostly put them on the list because of the price, and because I've seen some reviews that, at least in general, Montech has a decent quality case. Some of the side panels I think are a little bendy, a little wiggly, probably thinner metal than on a more expensive case, but you'll have to check that out for yourself and see. But the X1 is around $50 and the X3 is around $65, so around the same price as the Montech Air 100 ARGB. So if you can't find one of these in stock, the X3 might be a good option. The Lee & Lee 205 mesh might be a good option. But again, you're going to have to buy at least one fan for that because you're going to want to put a rear fan in. And the Zalman S2. The Zalman S2, it's always hovering around $50, $55, and it's a pretty good case. It comes with 3 fans, 2 intake, 1 exhaust in the back. It's got room for a 3rd fan on the bottom, although you may or may not, depending on the size of your hands, be able to install that 3rd fan because it's pretty tight getting into the bottom screw holes. But, if you get the top 2 in, I think you're probably fine, right? Like, it's just a computer fan. It's not like it's going to fly out of there, but your mileage may vary. You do what you think is best. My girlfriend's build is in a Zalman S2, and it's great. I'll throw some pictures of that up on my community page too, in case anybody wants to take a look at that. I think it, personally, because I have experience with it, if I couldn't get the Montech Air 100, I think I would go with the Zalman. I do want you to keep in mind, though, that the Zalman is kind of a narrow case. It's meant to have a smaller footprint. It's not a micro ATX case, but it's maybe borderline. And it does not have a lot of room on the backside for cable management. It was kind of a situation where I was reading a comment on Reddit, and I was like, oh my God, that's exactly what it was like, standing on luggage to get it zipped up. We had to lay it over on its side, and I had to press down on it, and she had to get the screws in to hold it down. It doesn't bulge out or anything, though. It's totally flat, but it's pretty skinny back there for cable management. So there is that. But overall, it was easy to build in. There's a decent amount of room in there, and like I said, she's got a 6700 XT in it, and there's plenty of room for the power cables to come out. We've got an ID, an ID 240 cooler on it, and that clears the glass just fine. Speaking of coolers, the 13100F comes with an included box cooler from Intel, and I think that's going to be, I think we can leave well enough alone there. Once I start testing it, if it starts running hot, I'll look into maybe getting that ID cooler, but I think the included box cooler is going to do just fine. So we've talked about all of this stuff. We've talked about the alternatives there. So let's move on to the graphics card, the meat and potatoes of this thing. And this is why I determined that I can't do a $500, $600 build. In my mind, I had already kind of set this in my head. The lowest graphics card I wanted to do was a 1660 Super. And once I got the rest of the build priced out, I decided, yep, I'm going to go with the 1660 Super. Now, you can't get one of these new. Everything else in my build is new, except for the graphics card. And I think same is going to turn out for you. Nobody's making 1660 Supers anymore. I did happen to find, and there's 2 left on eBay if you want to take a look. I haven't got mine yet. It's supposed to come on Saturday, but this guy had 3 open box 1660 Supers. So theoretically, it's basically new. So I thought that was a pretty good find. I got it for $140 plus like $15 shipping, so like $165. I think it was like just over $170 with shipping and tax. And I thought that was pretty good. So all of the rest of the build cost $510, and then add the 1660 Super on, and we're up to, what is that, $680. So we came in under $700 with what I think is a pretty beefy list of components that's going to leave you room to upgrade. So that 1660 Super is going to get you pretty decent 1080p gaming, and then you can upgrade that almost as high as you want to. Now, depending on pricing in your area and what you can find by the time you get around to watching this video, maybe you can't find a 1660 Super, or maybe something goes haywire with the prices. You can look for 1660 Ti. It's essentially the same card for practical intents and purposes. The 1660 Super is 4 or 5 FPS lower in most titles. I watched a bunch of reviews, bunch of videos on both these cards, and they're real close. If you've been a longtime PC gamer, you already know this. They probably should have just not even made the 1660 Super and just lowered the price of the Ti, or they should have got rid of the Ti and just had the they didn't need a 60, a Super, and a Ti, but they did. So I would not get a base 1660. That thing is terrible. But the Super with the GDDR6 RAM, VRAM, is a good 1080p machine. So same thing with the 1660 Ti. Now, you could go up, and I almost did. I was looking at some 2060s, and I found a pretty low mileage looking 2060 Founders Edition, but it was like $225. But I saw a lot in between $250 and $300. I saw a lot of 2060s, to some 2060 Supers edging up to that $300 mark. Once you start getting around $300, you're looking at 2060 Supers and 2070s right now. So that's why I threw the 2070 on there. But if you could, check your Facebook Marketplace, check Craigslist, check whatever's in your area. If you can get a good deal on a 2080 Ti, 2080 Super, whatever you can find that fits your budget, this build will accommodate it. That's kind of the whole point of this. We got a good case to build in. We've got a solid processor, even though it's entry level, and we've got a power supply that'll take care of business. So whatever GPU you can fit into your budget, after the $500 or so, give or take, that you spend on the base part of the build, get what you can afford, get what you want to put in there. So really, I think we've looked at. Yeah, we've taken a look at all of these. So we're down to final thoughts. From here, we're going to go over and I'm going to do the unboxing and a little case review on this Montech. Again, pause the video, see if you can find one, and go buy it. Because if you have a Micro Center near you, they might have them. Amazon 3 days ago, when I ordered this stuff, had shipped, available through Prime. They were $80, so it's a little bit more expensive. There is a third-party seller on here selling them for $74.99 right now. Pause the video, buy this case. That's what I think. Honestly, this is so much bang for your buck. So much bang for your buck. It's got a hinged glass side panel, 4 ARGB fans. I mean, it's just, if you can find one of these, I think you should get it. But that's just this guy's opinion. You do what you want to do. So from here, we're going to go over to the table and we're going to do some unboxing with the case and the rest of the build, and we're going to get her going. So Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you when we start getting into this stuff. Peace.